Hi everybody, it's not a product video today. We're going to do something different. This is the first in our series of how-to videos, and what we're going to start with is edging and waxing a snowboard. So just to start, go briefly through the kit you're going to need. So for sorting out obviously your bindings, you're going to need a screwdriver, some cleaning product. You can pretty much use any citrus based cleaning product, although I've got a proper specific one there. Cloth, brushes and pads. You can, like I say, there's a few varieties, so it's kind of a mid brush, you know, mid to hard sort of brush. I mean, we've got a professional one there. An iron, as you can see, I've just got an iron. You can spend 40, 80 pounds on a really good proper iron, but to be honest, if you're just doing it a bit for yourself in the house, go to B&M's, get yourself one for 5-6 quid, as long as you're not using your mother's, because you'll never be able to steam anything again. Obviously you need your wax, scrapers, variety of different scrapers here, just to show you. So you've got your triangle style, which I quite like, a nice flat one there with a bit of an edge on it, but a good flat long one's always quite good. And you can get metal scrapers, but to be honest, if you want my personal opinion, I wouldn't go anywhere near my board with a metal scraper. That's just mine. I'm sure they're fine. They do produce them, so I'm sure they can be worked with. So you've got your scrapers there. The two tools which I would say you can't substitute and you have to really buy is, one's an edge tuner. Don't know whether you can see it there. One side's at 88 degree, the other side's at 90 degree. I'll go into the differences later. A little bit of a block just to take off the burrs when you are edging, and last but not least, you can use your brush again, but I quite like to use a scouring pad just to finish off the board and to clean it up towards the end. So what I'll do, and finally one piece of kit that's absolutely essential, cup of tea, so it does take a while. So first job is your bindings. Really straightforward. There's only two real things I would say to you when you're doing your bindings. Is number one, if you haven't took your stuff off before and you do have a comfortable setup, make sure you keep an eye on your base plates, which should be able to get a close-up of there. Second of all is make sure you buy a screwdriver that really actually fits. There's nothing worse than having chewed up base plate screws when you're trying to sort stuff out, especially if you have a problem up on the slopes and you're having to get one of the ones that's attached to the outside of a lift. So make sure you get the right size screwdriver. Like I say, make a note, they've all got a dial on for the different for your different setups. I personally like to set up at 12-12. I just find it's nice and comfortable, but anywhere sort of between 12 and 15 if you're looking for an even split is a really good setup. Obviously you want to be more front foot forward for if you're slaloming, and you know, if you want to be a bit more comfortable, you can always adjust it. So here we are, one down. Make sure you've got somewhere safe to keep your base plate screws. I tend to keep them, and don't forget, don't lose your washers either. I tend to keep them with the specific plate just for ease. Also, another quick tip for you, if you take it off, you can generally find, if you've been riding your board for a while, there's always a bit of a patch on there, so when you're trying to get your front and rear adjustment, you can always kind of look out for your patch that you've had before. Right, so there's your first task done. Nice and easy, straightforward. You don't need to worry about the top end of your board. So if you flip it over, obviously I don't know whether you can see on the video, but my board is a little bit scruffy just because it's being used, and because I'm a sod and I don't dry my board off properly before I put it in the bag, there's a few rusty edges there. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim everything up, get it nice and fresh, get a new fresh layer of wax on, and it should look a lot better, as well as riding a hell of a lot better. So next stage is clean it up. Like I say, any good citrus cleaner that you want to use, you can get them from your local stores or anything. Just give it a good spray over. and you know, let it soak in for a little bit. And your good brush, give it a brush. All this does is takes off all your old wax, takes off any of the mud, any of the rubbish that's been on there, and gives you a really good solid base to work from. There we are. Now, like I say, one thing you will notice when you've cleaned your board off is just how many nicks and little cuts you've got from hitting your rocks or your stones or whatever. You can P-tex them. I'll do a P-texing video later, but to be honest, if they're not too deep or they're just little scratches, I wouldn't worry too much about them. The wax should fill in nicely. So once it's all cleaned off and prepped, you then go on to edging your board. Now, a couple of things with edging your board. You'll get a lot of people who'll tell you you don't use your tail or your tip of your board for riding, so detune the edges of it. To be honest, for me, I know you might catch the odd edge, but just I'd allow the tip and the tail of my board to detune naturally. They will go into stuff, they will round off at the end of the day, and I just think it's a bit unnecessary, you know, aggressively getting into your board with a file all the time and trying to detune that. I know if you're park lads and stuff like that, you'll want to detune the whole thing, but that's something for a bit later. For every sort of all mountain type riders, you want a good edge on there. I know not on the tail and the tip, but I don't think there's any real need to detune. So next stage after that is your edges. Now, I might disappear out of shot slightly, so you'll have to tell us if I have done. But a couple of things to do. You've got your board clean. Now, this is the only tool I would say you can't get away with. I know you can get a file and you can kind of put some tape around it to sort it out, but a proper edging tool is a real lifesaver, and they're not expensive. Get both sides. One side's a 90-degree edge, so if you want to tune your board up, if you want to be able to carve well, if you want it to behave well on the piste, if you want it to work well, you want to use the 90-degree edge. If you are a bit of a park rat and you're looking really to just hit boxes, rails, jumps all day, and you want that difference, then the 88-degree is a much better option for you. Just detunes those edges, stop you from catching the edges. But like I say, for me, I'm an old man now. I like to ride pistes and I like to hit it as hard and as fast as I can, so I'll get it. Couple of tips for it is I like to try and start at the edge and I run it all the way down the board at the 90-degree angle and always go in the same direction. You do have your little block for taking off the burrs afterwards, so as long as you're not too aggressive, don't worry too much. You literally, obviously you don't need to go around the tip and the tail, but you just start the edge. Whoop, if I actually get it on, there we go. And remember, you're not taking off chunks of material, you're just cleaning that edge of the board off, giving yourself a good grip. And you might think you're not taking anything off, but you will be able to see you do end up with material on there. And if you notice again, everything I do is in one direction. Now, I have to be honest, my board's not actually that old, so I'm just going to give it really a clean up and get those rusty edges off. Again, pick an edge, 90, make sure you've got the right degree, make sure it engages and just run it down. Bit of force is needed, but you don't have to go crazy. And I don't know whether you can see there, obviously all the little gouges, it's just blocking what I'm doing, making it slightly less even, but in the end you'll end up with a nice even edge. Don't worry too much about being too neat, because you will take those few little extra bits of burrs off afterwards. Now, one thing I should have done before I started doing the edges is I should have plugged this in. If you are using a normal iron, by the way, make sure you have it turned right down. You don't want it steaming and you don't want it really hot, because you don't want it burning the bottom of your board. So like I say, normal iron will work, just make sure it's kept on a low setting. So there we are. Edges pretty much sharpened. Like I say, I didn't need to take a huge amount off because it's pretty sharp anyway. It's just took those rusty bits and those big sort of gouges out. Last thing you do is just run down the edge with a block, taking off any burrs, any loose bits, any sort of extras. And you can actually feel it with your hand. You can generally, you know, be careful while you're doing it in case you do hit a big burr. But you can feel when it's smooth. And as I said, if you are sort of detuning your rails for the park, you can be a little bit more aggressive, you know, and a little bit less caring with it. So it's just flat on there and just give it a go down. Again, gently, fingers or thumbs down the side, feeling for any burrs. But that's pretty much spot on. So now for the interesting bit. Popping the wax on. Right, so now we'll get the fun part, because we didn't, and I promise you I didn't, under any circumstances, forget to turn the iron on. So when you get the iron, and you can tell I've used this a bit because you can smell the wax burning off it, all you need to do, get your wax block, watch out for your fingers obviously, and if you start by, if you just put it on and let the wax drip, start along the edges, because they'll be the driest areas of your board. Obviously, they take the most contact. So just literally let it drip. Don't go too fast like I'm doing there. I'm trying to get it done a bit quick. Also, just to talk about waxes while I'm doing this, you can pretty much get a couple of different waxes, and it is really quite a good idea to get the right wax for the conditions. So if you're riding sort of UK indoors and stuff, you probably want a warm weather wax. Something that runs to about sort of -5 degrees, something like that. For Europe, generally, I mean, you can get an all-weather wax, which is, to be honest, a really, really good idea. It just means things work kind of easier for you. But sort of Europe, you're talking about mid-temperatures. If you're going to hit Canada, or if you're going to Bulgaria like I did last January, -20 before the wind chill, then you probably want a really good cold weather wax, and it is a really good idea to do it. So once you've got around the edges, you literally, I like to go in a sort of a circular pattern, getting a nice even thing, and just literally work your way into the center, making sure you've got a nice even spread of your wax. So there we are. Once you've got a nice sort of even layer on there, I don't know whether you can see that, pop the last of my wax in, let the last drip off. Now, for me, you don't want to put huge amounts of wax on, because all you end up doing is scraping it back off. So a nice even layer all the way around. So there we are. Once you're happy with the amount of coverage, you then literally just take the iron, again, keep it over the top of everything and just move it around, spread the wax out. You don't have to get it out really, really quickly. The best trick is though, is make sure you keep the iron moving at all times. Just, it stops you from burning the bottom of the board, it stops you from having a few issues. So what I tend to do is get it sort of roughly drawn out there as I can, then move on to the next step and go back over it and back over it. Once you've gone over it the second or third time, it should be nice and even. You should have a really good even layer on there. So there we are. Once the wax starts to heat up, you start to get a nice even layer. Again, remember, make sure it comes up nice and close to the edges, just because they're the part of your board that'll take the most, well, it'll get the driest. And while I'm doing this, actually, I'll give you a quick science lesson. Does everybody know why you wax your boards? I'm sure most of you actually do. But just in case you're not sure, the whole point of it is to create friction. You're not trying to make it smooth, you're trying to create friction, because actually you don't board on snow. What you board on is a thin layer of water that melts between the ice, well, the snow or the ice and your board. So what the wax does is it helps heat up the bottom of the board, helps create that friction, which gives you that water layer then to ride on. So there we are. There's your nerdy science lesson for the day, but that's as close to science as we're ever going to get on these. Obviously, if you get any little patches, you can literally just get a little bit of wax, get warm, Go on, and it should drip there. It's sticking to the side. There we go. So just if you have a little area that you seem to not have the coverage on, there's no problem at all. We're just adding that little bit extra wax. So there we go. Next step, one you shouldn't forget, and I know you might not be concentrating if you're watching, turn your iron off. Don't want to be burning your shed or your garage down or anything like that. So, don't know whether you can see that, but we've got a nice even layer of wax there. What we want to do is we want to leave that now for between half an hour and an hour, depending on how cold it is, to set properly and harden. So we'll see you in about an hour. Okay, welcome to an hour later. Honestly, I promise you it is an hour. So what we've got is make your choice. I've told you I don't really like the metal scrapers, although, you know, they're probably quite efficient. I'm going to leave this one be because, to be honest, I've borrowed this one off my friend and I want to see how a triangle scraper feels. Now, a lot of people will tell you to go from one end to the other. You're more than happy to do that depending on where you've got and what space you've got. Sometimes I've started from the middle and worked out, kind of straddled it if I haven't had the greatest sort of place. But because I've got a bit of room here today, I'm just going to literally start at the edge and come back, and you're taking all that wax you've just put on back off again. And because I'm doing this in the studio, I'm going to have to get the hoover out when we're done with this, but you know, that's life. So again, this might be one for the fast forwards, but as you can see, you just start taking it off, remove everything that's gone there. And just keep working down the board. You can kind of feel when you're hitting wax and when you're hitting the cleaner part as well. So you kind of do this on feel a little bit. As well as, you know, every now and again, ruin the floor, brush it off, have a look at what you've got. It's always sort of worth going back over, I think. Just make sure you've got everything. I mean, that looked clean there, but we've taken quite a bit of material back off. Make sure you clean your edges up, obviously, so you've got that nice bite on your turns. And especially if they've just been sharpened, this should be nice and easy to clean it off. And obviously, as you can see where we're doing this, you don't really need any specialist area or specialist equipment, unless you're going to be a pro about it and tune everybody's board. A good sturdy table and an easy wipe clean floor is all you really need. Again, it's always handy to go over areas you've just been, because you never know what you might take off. I mean, there's just a good extra chunk that I'd missed on the first pass there. Now, it's always wise to take your time with this bit, just to make sure you get everything off. Like I say, a couple of passes is always a really good idea, especially when you get down the back end. As your arms tire, you tend to leave some bits that you wouldn't leave on the first part. Also, be careful of your sharp edges. Ow. Remember, because your tip and your tail aren't really critical, you don't need to wax the tip and the tail, so you don't need to scrape it that much. So there we are. If you've done that, give it a quick wipe off so you get all of those little bits and pieces that are left on the top of the board. Now, one final step, and we're pretty much sort of done from here, is just to give it a last even out. Now again, you can use a brush, just literally circular motion, evens out those last little bits. However, personally, I like a normal scouring pad, so the same sort of scouring pads you use for cleaning up on a night, and it just really nicely evens out that last bit. So just a good once over, lots of pressure on always helps, circular motion, and you really are just cleaning up and evening out that last little bit. I'll probably go back down the board again, but there we go. And there we have one freshly waxed and edged snowboard. I know you can't really see anything, but that's the whole point. Should be nice and fresh now. Should get really good friction, so it should be awesome to ride on. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to be keeping an eye out. If you like this, then you can always subscribe to our channel. If you like anything else, check out some of our other videos, or like our Facebook page for loads more similar stuff. Thanks very much for your time, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.